Hello, everyone. I am Stephen Blackburn from University Business, and welcome to our webinar here today, which is entitled Right-Sizing and Democratizing Access, Strategic No-Code Tool Selection and Deployment in Higher Education. And all of this is brought to you by the generous support of our sponsor with us here today, Kuali. Now for some quick housekeeping items before we get to the presentation, and we'll get right to the webinar. So at the end of our presentation, there will be a live Q&A with our panelists. You can submit your questions. You can do that now at any point from now until the end. You can do that via the red Ask Question box at the bottom of your screen there. It's the one with the red question mark. You can also safely download some assets that are related to today's presentation, and you can do that via the blue box with the paperclip, and that's also at the bottom of your screen as well, so look out for that. Additionally, at the end of the presentation, so after the Q&A, a post-event survey will launch on your screen automatically, so we just ask that you please stay on until the very end after the Q&A so you can take part in that survey. It's very short, so no worries. We'd love to hear from you. And lastly, you please know that all of you who are in attendance today and everyone who registered, all of you will receive an email tomorrow from us here at UB. That email, it will include a link to the slides as well as the on-demand video. So look out for that in your inboxes. And now I'm going to hand things off to Casey Foster from Kuali, who will get things started for us. Casey, on to you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Casey Foster. I'm with Kuali. We are delighted to be sponsoring today's webinar. Kuali creates administrative software exclusively for higher ed. Our software is powerful, flexible, beautifully designed, easy to use, and it's developed in partnership with our customer community. Kuali Build is our no-code forms and workflow automation tool. It's designed to help you replace PDFs and digitize your processes across campus safely and securely in a way that your IT team will approve of. It's my great pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Michael Mundrane, Vice President for Information Technology and Chief Information Officer at the University of Connecticut. Michael leads information technology services at the university, which is responsible for providing IT-based enterprise systems, services, and capabilities in support of the university's mission. And a fun fact about Michael, he is a computational fluid dynamicist with a PhD from Rutgers. With that, I'll turn things over to you, Michael. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Casey. So I guess from what you've heard, I'm clearly the local nerd on this project, and welcome everybody. I hope to provide you with some context and some background information, and really the way we proceeded down a path of one, understanding a problem that we felt we had at the institution, how we approached that problem, the things we considered, and the solution we settled on, and some of the outcomes of what how that solution has panned out for us. In terms of basic context, I'd like to at least start with the Land Grant Act, which is from 1862. Senator Morrell sponsored, and Congress passed an act that essentially provided land for the creation of institutions, who then would take the obligation of educating the populace. That's what the act was. Less than 20 years later, the University of Connecticut was formed, both from that act and from a generous gift from the Storrs brothers. And I say that because the teaching and learning was really the foundation of the Morrell Act. The whole purpose of the Morrell Act was to provide for educating the population. And the University of Connecticut is an R1 institution. And so while we are a land-grant institution and teaching and learning are critically important to us, research is also critically important to us. And we add to that mission, we add outreach. And those four key components of the university mission drive the decision-making and the things that we are going to prioritize. That adds a level of complexity. And in that complex space, we were approaching a challenge of trying to allow for various business units to accomplish as much as they possibly could in the direction of the university mission. So I'm going to go to, I'll put this part up right away. Often I'm asked, what is the role of central IT? And why is there the purpose of central IT? And I know that lots of people who may be participating have strong views about this, and they might look at this a certain way, but I'm going to frame this in a very specific way. We form central IT because we want specialization. The whole purpose of it is specialization. I want a storage person who has such deep expertise on storage that we can provide storage solutions at an institutional level leveraging that expertise that are at scale and that are robust and that deliver, from a performance perspective, what the institution needs. That's the whole purpose of collecting specialists together into a central IT organization. And that is our key role, to identify system services and capabilities that can best be performed centrally and then provide those robustly at scale. I call that the first mission of central IT. And then if I turn around and I ask, then what is the second mission of central IT, or the second primary focus of central IT? And invariably I say it's to ensure the success of every other IT organization on campus. And I get it that there are lots of varied things that central IT can do, but when you boil it all together, I can condense it down to these two key missions. Now that's often what I'm saying when I'm describing central IT. Usually it's because I'm talking to IT people and I'm describing it in this way. If I go a little further, I would say, actually, universities are not IT organizations. And IT in general is not the purpose of the institution. It's a means to an end. It's not the end in itself, it's a means to that end. And I view the role of central IT not merely to ensure the success of other IT organizations, but to ensure the success of every other organization or group on campus. And it's from that context that we approached this problem of how to expand greatly what various business units are capable of doing at the University of Connecticut. Now, often there's this conversation around this tension, this creative tension between what I would call central IT and distributed IT. Central IT has broad perspective and has a view of the institution that spans many areas. But distributed IT often has a very useful, very local, very focused perspective. It's narrower, but it's much more in depth in the needs of the given area. Now, if we think of distributed IT in a passive way, where they are simply consumers of things that are available to them, then they represent monotonically growing demand. What their needs are, what their expectations are, constantly go up. In fact, we typically view this as a ratchet effect. Whatever set of capabilities and needs you're meeting today, that becomes the new floor. And then the future is usually an expectation for something above the current floor, never to go below the floor, to stay at the given floor or to go up. Now, when they're active, as opposed to being passive consumers of it, then they provide that perspective and they allow us to make decisions and choices that really can facilitate what they're going to accomplish. I say this with love for all of my colleagues at the institution. They're going to go forward whether it's with us or without us, and it's much better to ensure that they go forward with us. The challenge we're trying to meet as we go forward is we want to avoid a key dynamic, which is pathological in terms of outcomes. And that is local optimization at global expense. Various areas and various business units are often in a position where they're going to make decisions, and we want them to make decisions. We encourage them to make decisions. And they make decisions that will optimize a set of challenges that they have, and it will optimize it against their set of constraints and against their set of resources. It typically doesn't include or incorporate information around what happens more broadly, what happens institutionally. And one of the challenges, I think, is to ensure that we're working together, we're working in concert, that we're providing things for them so that when they're making their decisions, those decisions will optimize locally, but won't hurt other areas or other parts of the university. One of the challenges, or one of the perennial debates in information technology, is should we be monolithic in our technology selections, or should we be best of breed? And I actually think this is a false dichotomy. I think this is a very product-centric view of the question. And I think if we boil it down a little bit more, we would say we're all trying to maximize capability and we're all trying to minimize cost. Both of these are considered positives. And as a math-centric kind of guy, I typically write this down as an equation. I would say that value is simply benefits divided by costs. Now, I write that down and I use this frequently. But what's important is that people actually behave as this equation is a law, is a fact. And I'll give you an example. People will stand in line for 15 minutes at a Costco to get a cube of cheese because they see the cube of cheese as having a benefit of non-zero benefit, and they see and that cube of cheese is free. So it's zero cost with some non-zero benefit, and they view this as being high value. Now, I think that's a little bit simplistic in terms of how you assess that, because I think you have to go a little further with it. And if you're going to do a value calculus, you have to say it's realized benefits divided by total actual cost. Standing in line for 15 minutes is a cost. Realized benefits are extremely important. A benefit that we're not taking advantage of is not a benefit at all. It has no intrinsic value. And often what happens when we are assessing technology solutions is we get very enamored of all of the capabilities that might be possible with a specific technology choice. And I would strongly suggest that a little humility is important there. Because some of these benefits, many of these benefits, are benefits that we are never going to actualize, we're never going to realize, we're never going to exploit or leverage, which means they don't exist. For the purposes of any assessment, those benefits don't exist. Another is that complexity has a cost. So even if there are benefits, and those benefits are going to be realized, if those benefits require a high degree of complexity in order to extract, then that complexity has a cost, and that's part of the cost calculation. Invariably, when we strive for the best value proposition, and it's an honest calculation, we make the best choices. And I would respectfully suggest that that applies fairly generically in many of our decisions. It especially applies when we're making technology choices. So this brings me to, there's this challenge, or there is this question. Should we solve the problems for everybody, or should we enable them to solve their own problems? Sometimes solving a problem is too difficult. It's too complex. It requires too much expertise. It is not practical. It is not realistic. It's not achievable for various business units to solve this problem on their own. Clearly, that's a problem that needs to be solved in some central way, where the resources are more extensive, where the expertise around a specific problem may be greater. But often there are problems that can be solved much closer to the area, much closer to the problem. The solution should be available much closer to the problem. When we're trying to solve problems centrally, we're looking for standard solutions. We're looking for standard solutions that are at scale. When we're trying to solve a problem locally, we're looking for, or distributed, we're looking for uniqueness. We're looking for solving that problem as close to where it exists. And when I think of democratization, invariably what I'm thinking about is how can we, as an institution, facilitate lots of parts, lots of business units, lots of departments, lots of areas to be actively engaged in solving their own problems, or solving problems in ways that they think make sense. And by doing this, what we're really doing is we're taking the number of people involved in crafting solutions, and we're vastly increasing the number of people involved. And by doing that, I call that a force multiplier. The more people you can have engaged in a very broad way on solving issues, the more issues you're going to have solved. It has to be realistic, and it has to be accessible, and it has to be practical for an area to be able to solve it. And this is one of the reasons why it's important for any assessment to be humble. We have to be realistic about what capabilities are for people. For example, we can find a solution that is highly complex and highly capable, and it can absolutely do anything that we might require of it, as long as we surround it with a series of technical experts who then will execute in that environment and produce solutions. That is an approach. And that's an approach that scales to the size of the team you put around that particular solution space. That can't even come close to competing against a large swath of the university simply in terms of crafting solutions, because it doesn't have the bandwidth. And this is why democratization, where it's practical and where it can be accomplished, is hugely beneficial. It's beneficial both to central IT, and it's beneficial to all the distributed areas that might want to take advantage of it. Whoops. Now, when I think of this breakdown between central and distributed, this is not an arbitrary breakdown. And the reason is because the different areas have vastly different profiles of what they can, of where they're optimal, where their activities are optimal. And so central is optimal in terms of standard things and doing standard things at scale. And distributed is optimal in terms of local optimization, uniqueness, and meeting very, very highly specific needs. And where we want democratization to occur is in the intersection between them, where scale can meet unique needs, where unique activities, where distributed activities can add the unique capabilities they need to scalable solutions in order to facilitate outcomes. Now, in order to be in that spot, it's important, in fact, it's critical, that the surface complexity of the product is accessible so that various business units can get involved and have some level of immediate productivity. And by productivity, I'm not using the dictionary definition of productivity. Productivity by the dictionary definition is, or productivity simply says, what is the output? What is the output? What is the amount of output? That would be productivity. How much output do you get? But the working definition of productivity is one around relevancy. It's not, we will build it. If we build it, they will come. It's, we know this is needed and we're meeting that need. That's productive. And the way you can test this is in conversations with people. When something isn't useful, someone will invariably say, well, that wasn't very productive, was it? It was time and energy spent on something that ultimately won't produce or won't provide what we expect and what we need. And the reason we turn to things like low code, no code is because it doesn't require, neither of them require deep technical expertise from a development perspective in order to be productive, in order to produce outcomes or products that are immediately usable. Now, towards this end, there's a difference between low code and no code. Low code typically has some standardized language associated with it. There's a big overlap between them, but there is some development that goes with low code. From a democratization perspective, no code is clearly a better alternative than low code. The moment you move into the low code space, you lose a large swath of, I would call, citizen developers who would be able to execute design, conceptualize, design, and then execute solutions in a no-code space. A low-code space for them might be a bridge too far to be able to operate in that space. So we were leaning towards no-code when we were thinking about how we would democratize workflow development for various business units. We considered low-code. We had an we were going to pick whichever one we thought was going to be best in the end. We had an expectation that no-code was the way we were going to proceed. Now, I'm a literalist and a pragmatist. And so towards that end, when I write things down, I'm very specific about my language. As an example, I wouldn't say the glass is half full. I wouldn't say the glass is half empty. I would say the container is twice as big as it needs to be. I'm a literalist. And so when I say to identify the best practical low-code, no-code product for the university, I mean best practical. Best, that's a complicated thing. There are lots of considerations of what makes something best. But in the context of the buildup to this particular point, I think I've outlined a whole series of things that should be under consideration. And best would be the overall compromise amongst all of those things that we think is one, implementable and sustainable over time. That's what I mean by practical. And when I say for the university, I mean for the university. I don't mean for central IT. I don't mean for the loudest business unit. I mean for the whole part of the university. And in fact, I consider our metric success on this particular project was going to be adoption. How readily usable was it going to be throughout the institution? How many business units adopted it to craft solutions for themselves? How broadly did that go across the university? Was it a small pocket of business units? Was it business units sprinkled around the university? Were it business units that were technically proficient, business units that had lower levels of technically proficiency? That was going to be considered our metric for success. When we started looking at vendors and products, we were adamant that there's a set of characteristics that had to be present or it was a no-go. And I have these four, and I like to use these internally, and we certainly introduce these into the project. The first is that the vendor has to have history. I understand that there is this love of startups in the IT industry. I get it, right? It's a fast-moving industry. Startups have a high degree of sex appeal. But a provider with history has a reputation, and it has a reputation out in the public space, and they care about that reputation. And you only get that reputation through a period of time and through history. And so a vendor with history has a reputation that they need to defend. And if they have a product, we want a product that already has garnered some level of market share. That is a crowdsourcing way of assessing a product. Have other institutions, have other customers, have they voted with their wallets? Have they made purchases in this product? And does that product look good compared to other products in terms of this vetting and this sort of market-based voting mechanism? The third thing we look for is, does the vendor have a public commitment to that product in that market space? And we care about that because that public commitment is what ties the reputation that they've created with their history to the product that they've already introduced into the marketplace. And that's an ongoing commitment to that product in that marketplace. And finally, the fourth thing we really look for is, do we have the discipline to utilize that product the way it was intended? Now, I get this, that we place a premium and a high degree of appreciation for creativity in implementing solutions and in using products. But I'm a higher education institution. And for all of us in this space, I think it's safe to say that except for a very small number of institutions, we're thinly resourced. And when we're thinly resourced, it means that the safety net under us, if there's going to be problems, is not substantial. And I would respectfully suggest that if all 4 of these characteristics are present, then the safety net for technology choice is as big as it's going to be. That's the greatest safety net you can have. If I approach a partner, a vendor partner, and I'm using the product the way it's intended, and they've got a public commitment to that product, and I run into trouble with that product, I can pretty much guarantee they are going to strongly proceed in providing assistance to me. If I'm using that product in a way that's not intended, then they're probably going to tell me, well, we didn't think you'd use it that way. And it's difficult. So it's important to then recognize that the products that we select and in the space we select them with these characteristics, for us, for the University of Connecticut, this provides for us the greatest safety net, the best practical experience, both when things are working and the best practical experience when things don't work and we're looking for support. So this set of characteristics were vitally important, and we eliminated any provider and any product that couldn't satisfy all 4 of these. When we put together a team, and with the intention and the expectation that they were going to assess a set of low-code, no-code products for adoption at the University of Connecticut, we gave to them a set of characteristics that they were going to validate, and we gave them this perspective, and they worked on this. We told them that we were looking for key compatibilities. We were looking for integration options that were going to be workable. And in the end, we had, I think, 8 products. I mean, I put 8 products on the slide. I'm pretty sure it's 8 products. It might be 9. It might be 7, but it was around 8 products. I believe it's 8 products. And we had a team, a cross-disciplinary team, and we had them work on this. Now, of course, many of these were IT people, and like IT people will do, they bickered over various esoteric details of certain products, and this is the normal part of the review process. And we encouraged and we allowed for that. We also frequently went back and reset them around the dominant characteristics we were looking for in order to make sure that a product would be strongly usable at the university. And I'll give you an example. There's always energy and emphasis towards selecting a product that absolutely has the most capabilities. The product that can do absolutely everything compared to that you could imagine. And there was advocacy for products that met that space, or for, let's just say, a product that met that set of characteristics. We would go back, we would then work with the team, and we would remind people that, yes, okay, but that high level of complexity may not be readily accessible for other business units at the university. And while that may be an accessible product for central IT, in order to maximize capabilities that we might be able to deliver at some point in the future, we would never be able to have this product be broadly used outside of central IT, and it would fail that test. And so while maximizing capabilities certainly has some attractiveness, maximizing adoption is the metric of success for this product. So go back to those key qualities, go back to that, and have the team continue to read that. And frankly, they did a very good job, and they returned to their focus. And in the end, we ended up picking a specific product. And the product we picked was Kuali Build, hence the association here on this presentation. It's a no-code product, so we were satisfied that we didn't have to introduce that level of complexity. And as a no-code product, we also are looking at it in terms of how we would integrate it with other products that we have. For example, we use Kuali Financials here at the University of Connecticut. We're looking at Kuali Build from a central IT perspective as how we would add other workflow capabilities associated with, I would say, for customizations that we've pulled out of the central system and that we maintain as external workflow or work elements that are work in concert with our Kuali financial system, which right now is running in the cloud, delivered by Qualico. We saw Kuali Build as a product that had generic capabilities, generic workflow capabilities, had a lot of the kind of things that we would need to support workflows that were both complex, relatively complex, as well as simple workflows because our expectation was that lots of business units at the institution would be highly incented to use a product to solve simple workflow problems. It was compatible with our existing environment. It uses standardized things. For example, it's browser-based. To access to working with it, it produces browser-based things and the workflows. I just did performance appraisals this morning. Our performance appraisals are all done in Kuali Build right now. And so those performance appraisals were done this morning. I finished them this morning. I did all that work, and they're now busily going through the workflow of Kuali Build. I saw Kuali Build as realistic in terms of what it can actually do at the university. It has there is some complexity associated with the product, but it's an accessible level of complexity. And more importantly, it's accessible outside of central IT. It's accessible to much of the community. It allows for us to have what I will call, again, citizen developers. And it's effective in terms of the workflows that it creates. Now, I wanted to say, did I consider this successful? I'll cut right to the chase. Yes, I consider this successful. Currently, we have over 800 workflows at the university, and a very small number of them have been developed by central IT. The majority of the workflows have been done by all sorts of different areas at the university. Like any adoption, it's slow to start, and and then it begins to ramp up. And eventually, at some point in the future, we think we're going to have saturation. So for people who are interested, this is a sigmoid function. And we didn't initially, when we adopted it, we didn't necessarily see broad adoption across the university. And I didn't expect that to happen. For example, not everybody has immediate opportunities or challenges they're trying to solve. They're certainly not interested in not solving other problems and then going on working on workflows. These things had to come up naturally. There's an organic quality associated with it. There is still some learning curve. People have to learn a little bit in order to be productive in that environment. And if they want to do more complicated workflows, they have to learn a little bit more. So there is some learning that's required. We knew that there'd be a little bit of time before people would begin to adopt. And at the end of the day, once people came up that learning curve, and they did relatively quickly, it then exploded. And we went from a relatively small number of workflows that are currently supported through Kuali Build to over 800. And that happened once it took off very rapidly. And those workflows go from very, very, very simple things where people are just trying to collect a little bit of information to something more complicated like I did today, where the entire performance appraisal process, as developed by the HR department, is now a Kuali Build process, or is a Kuali Build workflow that is delivered. I log into the Kuali portal, the Kuali Build portal. I see what my action items are. It looks very similar to more complicated products. And look, one of the things that I saw as greatly attractive and that helped us when we made this is Kuali itself uses Kuali Build in a variety of contexts. And a product that's in use by the provider of that product, for me, always has good qualities, that's always a positive quality, and it provides me a high degree of confidence that the product is both usability and that the maker of the product has a vested interest in maintaining that product and evolving that product because they're relying on it too. When I went to Kuali Build, I was at Kuali Build recently because there was a meeting I had to attend, and what was a very key point to me when I was there was how Kuali Build, the product. I went to Kuali Days. Kuali Build, the product, is widely in use and is a strategic element of how Kuali is intending to move forward with their set of other products that they have available. And that, to me, convinced me that, the team that did this review, made a good decision. They looked at the right characteristics. They made a choice. We implemented that choice. Adoption at the university has been ferocious and has continued unabated. Eventually, I imagine that we will reach some steady state and we'll get close to some large amount. I don't think it'll ever hit saturation, but where the number of flows that are being retired are kind of equal to the number of flows that are being created. We're not even close to there yet. And we still have high demand of people looking to jump in the system and begin to develop workflows that meet their respective business needs. So by the set of criteria that we established going into this, we consider that this was a good choice, that we're very happy with the outcome, and that adoption is continuing at a healthy clip. So that's my quick overview of the challenge we're facing, of how what set of considerations we were applying, what we considered important, how we pursued it, what we chose, and how that's actually how that outcome has unfolded for us. And towards that end, I appreciate your time and that I've got that I let me go through all that, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that people might have. Thank you.
Perfect. Yes, thanks, Michael. And as you said, we are at the Q&A portion of the presentation now. If you haven't already, you can submit your questions, and you can do that by accessing the Ask Question box that we have right there on the bottom of your screen. It's the red icon with the question mark. I will now highlight that so you can find it easier on your screen. It's highlighted now. But before I get to the questions, I just want to remind everyone to please stay on until the very end, so after our Q&A session here, to take part in our post-event survey that will launch on your screen after the Q&A. So let's see here. So we do have a few questions in here. Let's go with this one. So it looks like this one is about accessibility. Michael, what factors did you look for in your search to ensure that the solution would be accessible to all users?
So right now inside the Information Technology and Services organization, I have an accessibility coordinator, an individual, an expert on technology accessibility. And we included them as part of the review process, and we included them to do an assessment of any product that we were going to pick. I mean, obviously their inclusion early was a little less involved, as they looked a little more cursorily at things. And as we became serious about which small set of products, maybe we're down to a couple, they then did more in-depth looks at that. Any product that was not going to be accessible in terms of that would be eliminated. And the reason is because the university has an obligation to make its system services and capabilities accessible. So we included a person who assessed for that, and they did that assessment, and we were satisfied.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's go with this one. What factors did you look for in regard to data security?
So here's the thing. I'm not going to go through a laundry list of factors. I'll tell you what our process was instead. When we have a technology purchase, actually any technology purchase, both from central IT as really across the university, procurement here at the institution will include central IT to do a security assessment. I have a security team, and they do a security assessment of that product. And that product, that security assessment includes a number of things. It may include a SOX report. It may include sort of various aspects. Not all providers have SOX reports, but they will look at that set of characteristics. We of course did that. We went through the normal process of looking at the product, having it assessed the way any procurement was done, whether it would be central IT or otherwise, and we made the procurement, we made the purchase, which means that it had satisfied that process and the set of things that we look at.
Perfect. Thank you for that. We have a few more questions here. Let's go with this one. So considering the varying levels of technical skill across departments, how do you propose we handle training and support for something like this to ensure broad adoption?
Sure. So, we consider this, and I didn't quite touch on this when I was speaking before. If a product has is highly complex and requires extensive training in order for it to be readily usable. It would have been a product that would be excluded. I refer to this as surface complexity. If a product is not readily usable with a fairly short run-up, then its surface complexity is high. And surface complexity is the level of complexity that exists in order to get some minimal productivity out of something. We looked at surface complexity. It was one of our considerations. Our expectation and our understanding was that if we could find a product that had a good balance, the best balance that we thought between surface complexity and capability, then much of the community with very minimal consultation would be able to do some basic things relatively quickly. And they would develop confidence and expertise while doing that. And that's how we've proceeded. Originally, the team was very sensitive about this, and they wanted to prevent people from having access to Kuali Build until they had gone through a full training and vetting process. And I interceded, and I reminded us that that requirement would be inconsistent with how we were selecting the products to begin with. And instead, we make the product available, we make consultation available, and lots of people enter and use the product with hardly any consultation whatsoever. Some require a little greater assistance, and we provide that greater assistance, but overwhelmingly, they're prepared to jump in and start to try to use the product with very minimal acclimation that we provide.
All right, thank you. Here's another one. How big was your team that conducted the initial assessment of products, and how big is the current core team that supports Kuali Build from an admin perspective?
Sure. So the first question is a little more complicated. And the reason it's a little more complicated is because we had people come in and out as we were going through our process, right? I would say the core group, the central group, was probably around probably around 5 people. But we added people at various facets of it to do different things. For example, our ADA technology coordinator gets added at one point to do some assessment. There's some preliminary. Then they get added back later to do a deeper assessment on an even smaller set of products. So the team itself, it ebbed and flowed in terms of its size. It could have been up to maybe even 10 people working at one point in time, but largely it was a 5-person team. And I'm sorry, was the second part of that question was?
Not a problem. Yeah. How big is the current core team?
Yeah. How big is the current? Yeah. See, I forgot that question because it's embarrassing. It's a person. We have one person who is primarily supporting a Kuali Build, and they get some assistance as needed from others in their vicinity around that same kind of application type. But it's a very tiny number of people. It's one person that we consider our primary person in support of Kuali Build.
Perfect. Thank you. Let's go with this other question here. For your experience, what has been the impact on IT support demands? Now, this is post-deployment.
Sure.
Have you seen a decrease in tickets? Yeah.
Sure. So here's the thing, if you just count tickets, there's been very little impact. But if you do a deeper dive and you consider what the tickets are about, then I would say the impact has been substantial. So if we look at that, the tickets prior to making this kind of solution available was invariably tickets around capability that didn't exist, assistance solving a problem in an environment that that they were having trouble working in, requests to somehow find custom solutions to meet local business needs, lots of those kinds of requests that we had to then adjudicate. Post, what we find is that we have less of those, much less of those, and instead we tend to get questions around, I'm having a little trouble doing X in this environment, which would be, let's just say, quality build. Here's what I'm trying to do in quality build. Here's where I am in this. Could somebody just talk me through this part of it? And then we provide somebody. So we have staff spending, I would say, a comparable amount of time providing support and responding to a comparable amount of tickets, but they're actually being responsive and getting to solutions at a much greater rate. So as opposed to providing response that problem can't be solved, that problem's not going to be solved, you'll have to look for something else. Instead, we're helping people work through their solution and get their solution finalized, many of which they do without any assistance whatsoever, but lots of times I would say they require just a little bit of help, and we provide that help. I would much rather have staff engaged, providing that final little bit necessary to get somebody over the finish line with the solution that they then want to then manage and support as their own, but continue to evolve that going forward, than to have them have my staff trying to explain to somebody why they're not going to get a solution. Both require time and effort. The former provides for the much better experience for my customers across the institution.
Perfect, thank you. And Michael, I'm going to give you a chance. You've been talking for a while, so this next one is for Casey, so we'll give you a break here. You've been talking for a bit. So Casey, is Build used for any curriculum workflow? And if yes, in what ways has it been most effective?
Oh, I love this question. Thanks. So there's kind of a two-part answer to this question. The first is Kuali actually has a purpose-built curriculum management product that is built leveraging many of the same components that are present in Build: super flexible, powerful form designer, drag and drop workflow, easy to maintain. So it shares a lot of attributes with our no-code forms and workflow tool, but it also has some purpose-built capability around managing dependencies, rules, terms, outcomes, data, so some things that are particular to the CM space. What we see are folks using our curriculum management solution and then also using Build. So registrars' offices using Build for things like program change request forms, all of those other kind of PDF-based processes that surround the curriculum management process. So kind of a two-part answer there, but Build in concert with curriculum management has been a pretty powerful combination for many of our customers.
Perfect, thank you. And it looks like we have one more question. Before I get to that, I just want to remind everyone who's on please stay on until the very end, because a post-event survey will launch on your screen. So it looks like we have one question, and then after the question is asked, we'll get that survey out to you. But let's see, and if in the meantime, we'll see if another one comes in. But right now, this last one that we have here, and it would be a great place to end. But given your experience to this point, Michael, how satisfied are you with your decision to go with Kuali Build?
I would go back to the way I framed the challenge we were trying to meet. We said that our metric of success was going to be adoption. And getting broad adoption of any technology product at the university on a voluntary basis that meets people's needs is usually a challenge that's very difficult. And if I look at the number of areas that are now solving problems and automating things and trying to make themselves more efficient and make themselves more productive using a tool and an environment that we have made available to them without us ever requiring anybody to use it, I would say that I am very satisfied, both with the choice we've made and the outcome.
Perfect. I'm glad to hear that, Michael. It's always good news. So I will say here, that was the final question that was submitted. So I'm about to go through my closing slides in just a moment. But to everyone, while I'm going through those slides, if any other questions do come to mind, please feel free to continue submitting them in the Ask Question box, the red one at the bottom of your screen with the question mark, because I'll make sure that those questions are sent over to our partners at Kuali so they can be answered at some point in the future. So again, as I go through those slides, feel free to continue submitting those questions. But first off, before I get to that, I just want to thank you again, Michael, for sharing your expertise and time with us today from the boots on the ground perspective, which is we always appreciate that. And of course, thank you to Casey as well for hosting all of this and for answering that last question there. And of course, thank you again to Kuali. And I'd also like to take a minute to thank you, our audience, for joining us here today as well. For those of you who enjoyed our presentation, we have more webinars like this one that are provided by Spur at University Business, which is the leader in editorial coverage of news, trends, as well as current issues in higher ed. We have a wide range of readers who subscribe for free to UB, and they stay up to date with us online via our newsletters. We have our shorter ed talks, our new podcasts, as well as webinars like this one. Also, if you would like to watch this presentation again, or for those of you who believe that, what we talked about today would be helpful to your colleagues, and I'm sure that is very much the case. We are pleased to announce that our team at UB, we will be sending you an email later tomorrow. That email will include a link to the on-demand recording of this presentation, as well as a link to the slides. And also, again, just a reminder, the post-event survey will launch on your screen, and I'm actually going to push out our related content on your screen, which should be appearing there. So if you haven't already, please feel free to download or click on any of those links safely. So with that, on behalf of UB, this is Stephen Blackburn. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. And thank you again, Michael, Casey, and Kuali. This was great.
Thank you, everybody.